Hey, it's Mike here, and today I'm going to do a response video to AllTime10s video 10 Ways Vegans Are Ruining the World, which came out about 2 weeks ago, or 4 internet years ago. Many have shared their criticisms of this video's factual inaccuracy, but because there's still a decent amount of support for it and sharing of it, and many of you have messaged me to do a video on this, let's take a look at their claims and see how they stand up to the research and basic logic. And researching these topics, I realized that there were some myths that I believed in that were actually not true, so stay tuned and see if you also believed those myths. All right, let's go. And real quick, I finally found an ethically sourced shirt to print on. I'm doing a little bonfire.com campaign. Vegans are often called killjoys, so I decided to be a kalejoy instead. Isn't the kale so cute? It's actually gonna be printed a little bit higher up like this one, so links in the description. All right, now to the video. So the countdown from number 10. Get a load of this one.
Number 10, environmental footprint. They controversially claim that eating lettuce is over 3 times worse in terms of greenhouse gas emissions than eating bacon.
I actually had to laugh out loud when I heard this because the complete opposite is true. This is like calling the sun cold or the ocean dry. They of course point to the lettuce emits more greenhouse gases than bacon study, which is a horrible representation of real vegan diets, which usually replace bacons with super low carbon things like legumes. According to the USDA, in 2012, we ate about 71 pounds of red meat a year, which is about 3.2 ounces a day, the caloric equivalent to almost 6 heads of lettuce. So right there you can see how impractical this comparison is for the environment. But let's look at what actual diets emit. This study looked at dietary emissions. The highest bar is actually the average amount of meat consumed in the US. The average American is over 2 times the dietary footprint of a vegan. Animal products actually are ruining the environment, though. Depending on the report, it is either a leading or the leading cause of greenhouse gas emissions. It is responsible for 70 to 90% of Amazon destruction, is likely the leading cause of species extinction, uses 1/3 of the Earth's fresh water, 1/3 to 1/2 of the Earth's grain, about half of our land in the US, and is a leading contributor to dead zones and coral reef destruction. I'd say their point was intellectually dishonest, but clearly there was no intellect involved.
So this means you can swap the salad for a bacon baguette and feel less guilty.
Swap some lettuce leaves for a chunk of an animal that can recognize itself in the mirror and feel less guilty. No. Next point is basically man boobs.
Number 9, crazy hormones. Too much soy in a man's diet has been linked to gynecomastia, male breast enlargement, and has been known to cause a loss of sexual desire.
Again, exactly opposite of the truth. As I mentioned in my video on this topic, looking at this study that gave men 1.7 cups of soy milk a day, they found no difference in their levels of free or total testosterone. But looking at estrone, a type of estrogen, it actually went down by 3%. Doesn't that actually make them less feminine? But let's just put the nail in the coffin here. What would happen if you took those soy isoflavones, those phytoestrogens, and concentrated them way above what people would be eating? Well, this meta-analysis looked at actual soy consumption as well as soy phytoestrogen extracts. The conclusion was, quote, neither soy protein nor isoflavones affect reproductive hormone concentrations in men. And how about actual mammal hormones in cow's milk? Looking to this study, subjects fed cow's milk had a 20% drop in testosterone if they were men, and for all sexes, well, this is estrone, that same estrogen measured in the previous study, going up by 25%. And AllTime10s, seriously, is this something that would actually ruin the world? I mean, everybody loves boobs.
Number 8, California drought. The super healthy nuts, mostly grown in drought-hit California, need millions of liters of water to be produced. So you might want to think twice before you pour it on your cereal.
As Happy Healthy Vegan pointed out in their response video to this,
University of California at Davis released this chart, and look at it, these yellow and orange lines here, those are the crops that are grown specifically for animals to eat. Well, where are the almonds? They're hard to find. Well, you have to really look. They're the 4th line down, combined with pistachios. Barely a drop in the bucket compared to alfalfa and forages.
I would add that a fraction of that nut bar represents 82% of the world's almonds, the vast majority, while all of that animal feed, which is far more, represents a laughably low amount of the total animal products produced in the world.
Number 7, blood guacamole. Drug cartel known as the Caballeros Templarios. They've infiltrated the avocado sector by making farmers and landowners give up a percentage of their income, taxing all fruit sold and land owned, and even murdering those who refuse to play by the rules.
And this is solely the responsibility of vegans. How? Seriously, do I need to whack you across the side of the head? You don't want to smell like garlic? Seriously, vegans probably don't eat any more avocados than the average person, or maybe a little bit more. Still, 90+% of avocados would then be eaten by people that aren't vegan. Should everybody, regardless of diet, buy ethically sourced avocados? Yes. So buy avocados that aren't grown in Mexico, or better yet, pressure your grocery stores to make sure their supply chains are ethical, and that way we don't just screw over every avocado producer in Mexico. But really, you can't just find any plant food and say that vegans are ruining the world because they eat plants, especially when you look at the statistics I mentioned earlier about how animal products actually are objectively ruining the world.
Number 6. Cancer and heart disease. The long-term vegetarian diet can alter human DNA, raising the risk of cancer and heart disease. They found that populations who have had a primarily vegetarian diet for generations were far more likely to carry DNA, which makes them susceptible to inflammation.
As somebody who originally went vegan to prevent heart disease and cancer, this is pretty ridiculous. This is probably one of the most tenuous connections I've ever witnessed. This loose gene thing, and then they're not even talking about vegans. This is, again, like calling the ocean dry, like finding a desert island in the middle of the ocean and being like, there's a distinct lack of moisture in the ocean. Yeah, from this meta-analysis, vegans had 15% lower rates of cancer.
The data clearly show the opposite. Take that, bitches.
And looking at heart disease from this whole food vegan trial showed reversal of heart disease on angiograms and measurable artery clearing at 3.5 weeks. And the end result, after 12 years, those who stuck with their diet had 100 times lower heart attack and stroke rates than people that went off the diet.
These days, spending on cancer medicine totals around $100 billion worldwide, with the cost expected to exceed $150 billion by 2020. But if veganism continues in popularity, it could cause these healthcare costs to increase further.
Can you imagine the healthcare savings from 100 times lower heart attack and stroke? He then puts forth a really loose arachidonic acid connection, which I find super laughable because in the last video, I talk about people accusing vegans of not getting enough arachidonic acid. Which is it? The reality, though, is that our body makes all that we need, and animal products are loaded with arachidonic acid, which is linked to inflammation and increases in depression and suicide risk from that.
Number 5. Nutrient deficiency. One vital nutrient that vegans can't get in a meat-free diet is vitamin B12. In fact, the problem is so bad that one study showed a whopping 92% of vegans are deficient in this critical nutrient.
Wow, I would say that this is dishonest, but he clearly just borrowed it from another dishonest person on the internet. Chris Gunners of Authority Nutrition, a low-carb blog. Why vegan diets suck. Not only was this study done 35 years ago, it was also only done on 13 vegans, and that statistic was for vegans who did not supplement. So that's a horrible representation of all vegans, especially of modern vegans. A better idea could be gotten from this very recent 2017 study on the micronutrient status of vegans in Switzerland. They looked at 4 times as many vegans as the last study, and the result was that they did not find a statistically significant difference in deficiency between vegans and meat eaters. Thankfully, the B12 issue has not been taken lightly, and that was probably achieved between fortified foods and supplements, which is why my B12 is higher than the average omnivore.
According to Dr. Frankie Phillips, a registered dietitian with the British Dietetic Association, vegans are less strong than meat eaters as they have weaker muscles due to a lower intake of amino acids, which generate muscle mass.
According to a single dietitian, vegans are weaker because protein. No links in the description to see if this was taken out of context or whatever. Of course, this claim doesn't appear to be based in reality. From this study, vegans had higher levels of blood protein, of serum albumin, than meat eaters. And we're seeing a revolution in vegan bodybuilding and powerlifting. For example, Bill McCarthy just set a Maryland state record for equipped bench pressing at 584 pounds. And as I stated before, Kendrick Ferris was the only male weightlifter from Team USA to make it to the Rio Olympics, and he set a US record on the way. Of course, he's vegan. But vegan weakness it's ruining the world.
Number 4. Mental health. In 2014, a controversial study by the Medical University of Graz concluded that those who adopt a vegan or vegetarian diet were ill more often, more susceptible to physical and mental disorders, and generally had a lower quality of life than people who eat meat.
This study appears to be making a comeback, but it is still as crappy an argument against veganism as ever. First of all, it's not even a study on vegans, it's on vegetarians who of course still eat the leading sources of saturated fat and cholesterol, which is dairy and eggs. And so many of the findings were statistically insignificant and they even spelled basic words like match wrong.
They concluded that the big difference in susceptibility to disease was diet.
Nope, they actually say it may have not been causal, that people with these issues may have a higher tendency to try a vegetarian diet. The reality is that actual vegan trials like this one show improvements in scores such as mental health. As for diabetes and migraines, this study showed that vegans had a 78% lower risk of total diabetes, and from this study, 88% of people put on a vegan diet noted an improvement in their headache pain, and 1/3 of them were able to lower their medication.
Number 3. Starving South America. The hike in prices due to its increasing popularity in the Western world pushed the very people that farm quinoa out of their own marketplace.
The same argument for blood guacamole applies here, but let's play along because I realized I was somewhat at the whim of this myth that quinoa hurts these people. According to this paper from the University of Towson, Maryland, this whole issue has been oversimplified. The Smithsonian summarized their findings, saying that they compared 3 groups: people who don't grow or eat quinoa, people who eat it but don't grow it, and people who do both. They found that as the purchase price of quinoa rose, so did household welfare in all 3 groups. The welfare of those who produced and consumed quinoa rose more quickly than the other 2 groups, but even families who didn't produce quinoa saw an effect. And the ultimate slap in the face to the idea that quinoa farmers couldn't eat their own crop from this other paper, consumption among quinoa farmers never even decreased. And even if it was ever a problem, the price has now crashed down to about $2.50 per kilogram, probably because people were told they were hurting farmers by buying their crop.
Number 2. Children's health. Well, nutritionists have warned that infants who follow the diet are often leaner and smaller than those who eat meat.
Did he just make a point for veganism? From the CDC, quote, "The percentage of children with obesity in the United States has more than tripled since the 1970s. Today, about 1 in 5 school-aged children has obesity." That's obesity. That's not just overweight. That's 20% of children.
Number 1. Cashew burn. A cashew has 2 layers of hard shell, between which are caustic substances, cardol and anacardic acid, which can cause serious burns. As a result, many workers in the cashew industry have permanent damage to their hands from this corrosive liquid. Drug addicts detained in former labor camps in Vietnam process cashews. Those who refuse to work are beaten with truncheons, given electric shocks, locked in isolation, and deprived of food and water.
It's easy for me to just say the blood guacamole arguments apply here, but it's more than that. When you are in an industry where you are already abusing animals, it's one step closer to abusing humans. We have slaughterhouses that give people PTSD that have been described as hell on earth. And when a slaughterhouse comes into a city, it increases the crime rate of that city, according to studies. There's also the leather tanning industry, which is completely hellish, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I do cover this stuff in my Vegan for Human Rights video. Again, I do urge vegans or people of any diet to buy solid, fair trade, or local when possible. So, AllTime10s, vegans might be ruining your world, your barbecue. They might be a killjoy for you, because they cause cognitive dissonance for you by highlighting, by bringing to the surface the inconsistency between your beliefs and your actions when it comes to animals. But no, vegans are not ruining the world. In fact, they are helping in virtually every single way that you mentioned they are ruining the world in. It's to the point where I could probably make a video of 1,000 reasons that meat eaters are ruining the world. It's that bad. In the end, clearly they just knew it would be popular to rag on vegans and then proceeded to spin the most crappy spider web of anti-vegan lies I have ever seen. It's like those spider webs that are spun by spiders on drugs. This is like meth spider level. I mean, just look at all the studies linked in their description. None. And then you can check out the description under this video. Anyway, I hope that AllTime10s somehow magically sees this video and is objective enough to see that their arguments were just not factually correct. Okay, a couple more things. I finally got this thing, 100K subs. Came a little late, but it's pretty awesome to have, so thank you so much to all of you people who have been sharing and subscribing. I know a lot of you have been subscribed since like 100 subscribers, so hell yeah for staying here. And then also, as for these shirts, I have a lot more designs coming. I just have to tweak the colors and stuff to get them printed on this type of shirt. And finally, let me know down below if you have any creative ideas for 1,000 reasons meat eaters are ruining the world. All right, thank you for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.
And when eaten as a snack, can actually help to reduce hunger.
When you eat food, it can amazingly make you less hungry.